Welcome to another weekly edition of Account-Based Friday. We've got a special guest joining us, Max Spanier, who is the CEO of Sloane Staffing. I'm going to have Max introduce himself in a moment, but just to kind of orient you around as people are gathering in the lobby here, we've done over 300 of these videos. My co-host Meg, who's on travels today, and we've done over 300 of these best practice go-to-market videos. If you click on the QR code in the upper corner here, it'll bring you to those 300 videos. If you have a specific question around go-to-market, be AI, ABM, demand gen, brand, we can certainly route you to the right video so you're not having to leaf through all 300. But there is a war chest of great best practice information out there when we talk to industry experts like Max about trends of what's going on. In addition to that, we do this every Friday. And like I mentioned, Meg, who's my co-host, formerly ran Serious Decisions Research. She's on travels today, so it's just going to be Max and I for today's conversation, which I am super pumped to talk about. Just to give a little bit of background on Max, too, and I'm going to ask you to also introduce yourself. Max and I reconnected at a recent Sixth Sense conference, and it really made me realize in our conversations how deeply entwined he is with technology and his business. A natural fit for anybody who's recruiting for Sixth Sense talent, demand-based talent, Clay talent, Marketo talent, and the list probably goes on beyond that. But a lot of synergies between what he does and what we do. So naturally, we had a really good conversation. So Max, thanks for investing time today. Maybe you could share a little bit of background about yourself and we can dive right in.
Absolutely, John. Thanks for having me. And as you can see, I'm calling in from South Florida. I got a Bob Greasy jersey in the background. There's a Cognizant Classic going on right now in our backyard that we're going to bring our whole team to. But really appreciate you having me. So intro was perfect. I mean, essentially just diving a little bit deeper. Before I started a recruiting agency 6 years ago, I was a marketing technology enterprise account executive. So I'm sure a lot of these people on this conversation has probably seen an email come from me from one of the companies that I've worked previously at. So the last stop that I had, I spent about 10 years selling MarTech. The last stop was Marketo, and I thought that was my dream job. Never leave anywhere. This is the 800-pound gorilla in the marketing technology space. I read, so much of John's, content on LinkedIn. I love the story. I love what they were doing. But a year in, we got, Marketo was acquired by Adobe. And I realized firsthand, it became such a bigger scope. And I saw firsthand how hard it was for Marketo customers and prospects to hire Marketo talent. And the light bulb went off. Keep in mind, I'm a marketing technology sales guy, never worked at a recruiting agency. The light bulb in my head went off and I started Google searching, in deals, a prospect would ask me, hey, I want to buy Marketo, but do you know a Marketo admin or a Marketo architect or, marketing automation person that I can hire? I started Google searching Marketo recruiting, MarTech recruiter. There wasn't one. So 6 years ago, I sought out to start the best marketing technology recruiting agency in the world. Since we've opened our doors, we've hired over 1,000 marketers for B2B companies, throughout the world. We're the only recruiting agency in the Marketo Adobe ecosystem. I know we were talking about it before we jumped on the call. I'll be at the Adobe Summit in a few weeks. We're also the only recruiting agency in the Sixth Sense ecosystem. So not only do we have, great talent in this space, but we work with a lot of both Sixth Sense and Marketo and demand-based customers as they're going through this journey of, digital optimization, digital transformation.
Super interesting background. And, just thinking about how you've really focused on the technology, there's, in my experience, especially the marketers that may not have a background in technology, they kind of blindly hire for technology without involving somebody with your kind of skill set. Like maybe you could walk us through that process of like, what do you see there? And, your value to me would be kind of almost, I'm going to mispronounce the word, sommelier or the wine person of, hey, you really want to get this person because this person's got the right skill set versus kind of like anybody can talk a good game, but the good game?
Yeah, that's a great point, John. So when I started this company, we sought out to not, there's a million executive marketing recruiting searches. I know you've had folks on this talk that focus more on the higher level VP, CMO. We sought out to really focus on the director below type of candidates, which are more like the IC individuals that are more practitioner level. So, let's take a couple searches that we've done recently. There was a company in New York that we were working with. It's a marketing technology company. It's a Series C, 6 Sense customer, Marketo customer. CMOs in place. They need a really great demand gen person that's from the marketing technology space that truly understands, that buyer that has experience marketing to marketers, that knows 6 Sense, that knows Marketo. Let's just use that scenario here real quick. So what happens in most organizations is internal recruiting, they rely solely on posting jobs and then, interviewing the best people that come in. When you're hiring in demand gen, you're hiring in marketing operations, you have such a specific skill set that you're looking for. You have specific, budget experience, you have specific technology experience, you have, specific years of experience that you need. And it's really hard for, internal talent acquisition to know what that looks like and what that means. So a lot of the times we're really helping CMOs kind of think about what they're looking for and how do we translate that into an ICP, an ideal candidate profile.
Yeah, I love you're using the language of a CMO there too on the ICP side of things. With the 1,000+ people that you've hired, you've certainly seen a lot of trends. And just thinking about the trends as of late, obviously AI and there's new technologies. Like, what are you seeing from a trend and a candidate perspective? And then maybe on the flip side, what are companies asking for that maybe the candidates need to come up to speed on a little bit more?
Yeah. So just in conversation, we're talking a lot around demand gen, ABM, marketing operations. I'm sure everybody on this conversation has heard of the term clay or the word clay. They just, they're a AI tool. They've kind of coined the terminology GTM engineering. So if you think about marketing operations and AI, tools like clay are being, kind of spun up right now to help sales and marketing bridge the gap and being even more smart with how they're going to market and how they're prospecting. So we sought out recently, I mentioned earlier, we're the only recruiting agency in the 6 Sense and the Marketo ecosystem. We're in process right now to be the only recruiting agency in the Clay ecosystem as well, because I feel like that's going to be the next big thing in B2B. It's doing, as you know, John, like budgets over the last 3 years have dwindled, headcount has dwindled. CMOs are thinking, how do we do more with less? The days of marketing operations and demand gen teams being 5 to 10 in smaller organizations is non-existent. So leveraging technology and AI tools like Clay, but those are all great tools. But if you don't have the right people and process in place, a tool is just a tool, right? Now it's how do we maximize our ROI and investment of these, technologies and get the right people in the right seat at the right time.
Yeah. First of all, glad you brought up Clay as a technology, and we've written a lot about it as well on our blog. It is a fantastic tool. It has got Swiss Army knife capabilities. We've deployed it for our clients too, and I violently agree with what you're saying. Like, that is a great skill set to be having. And very interesting that you're looking at that too to really monetize, because that's a great opportunity.
I think in 12 months, I think every B2B company in the world will have Clay and will need Clay help. So John, good from a monetization, it might be good to start thinking about staffing that side of the agency up, because I think more and more people will invest in it. And it's not a huge investment. It's not a Marketo. It's that's $100,000+ investment. We're talking, a couple $1,000 a month tops. And that's for all the bells and whistles. So like, the whole day of and the biggest value with a tool like Clay is time savings. So instead of having an SDR team spend 2 hours a day prospecting, finding out who these ICP or these folks to reach out to, Clay does all that work for you. So you can literally line item, instead of hiring an additional 2 SDRs, keep the same head count, bring in a tool like Clay, bring in a GTM engineer that can help you make sense of what Clay can do. And you're actually netting, positive versus the additional headcount.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And Clay does save a tremendous amount of time. And I think you're wisely placing a bet there for a lot of reasons. One, their interface really requires an engineer to run it. But on the flip side, your savings is in that net new headcount, as you mentioned. So there may be a little bit of a trade-off there, but definitely you're not scaling like the old days of throwing SDRs at the problem and trying
exactly.
to, those days are done.
Yeah, the whole thing, and that's tying it back to this conversation around ABM and these people that we hire. It's all about like understanding who the target audience is, right, and really getting granular with what that person looks like, and why most companies are now, 2 years ago, ABM wasn't really a job title in companies, right? It was demand gen or field marketing. Now companies are seeing like these tools, and that's really where we tie our business around to. It's like we're tying our business around technology, where a lot of other recruiting agencies, they focus more on the job title. So most recruiting agencies, they focus CMO, VP marketing, right? Where we really set ourselves up, differently is we focus around the platforms. So the Sixth Senses, the demand bases, the Marketos, the HubSpots, because those are such powerful tools that you need the right people to execute.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about ABM, and that's how we initially started this series 3 years ago, 300 videos ago, was to talk a little bit about ABM. Are you seeing any shifts there in terms of skill sets that companies are being asked to have in their candidates? Is ABM still, active, or is it now kind of fading into the woodwork? Like where do you see things with ABM?
It is. So we have we're at a point with Sixth Sense now where we get introduced to a lot of their new customers as they're starting their ABM journey, right? What happens, what I see most prevalent is a company buys Sixth Sense. They think that they're just going to turn it on and their sales team is just going to be effective and be able to contact the right people at the right time. You and I both know that's not how this game works. So, what companies are realizing is they need to make that investment into an ABM hire, call it demand gen, call it MOPs, call it whatever you want, but they need that change agent internally that can, kind of bridge the gap between sales and marketing and really like drive the sales team forward to focus on specific accounts, specific, people, specific intent actions, and project manage that process from start to finish.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And first of all, let me just acknowledge the audience. For those that are joining us midway here, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We have the ability to promote them up. So if you have a specific question you want to ask of Max here, definitely pop it into the chat and we can promote it on up. Max, maybe just kind of reflecting, where do you see common mistakes being made today with hiring authorities on these individual contributor roles? Like, what are the blind spots that they may be having, as whether they use you or not? Like, where do you see kind of typical blind spots?
I love this question. So this is probably our biggest value prop, where a lot of CMOs will rely on internal posting a job on LinkedIn. So let me take a step back.
Sure.
When CMO gets budget to hire a ABM person, the first thing that they do is they tap into their network. They see who do they know, who would be a good fit. That comes dry. They post a job on LinkedIn. They're very specific with what they want. If they're a health tech company that has 6 cents in Marketo, in the crystal ball, they want somebody that has experience marketing into, health tech leaders, right? If it's CTO or whoever the case may be, they want 6 cents experience. They want Marketo experience. The problem is, I see a lot of times CMOs will start settling on those requirements because time goes on, and it's 60 days into a search, and nobody great that has all three, come to the table. So then they go, well, let's take health tech off the table, or let's take 6 cents off, or let's take Marketo. Then they end up settling, and then I see it all too much. That person doesn't end up working out, and then now they're back to square one.
Just going to promote up the ask the question comment here. If you got specific questions, feel free to drop them in. We can weave them into our conversation here. Yeah, and not a surprise in terms of kind of sharing what you're seeing there. How about on the flip side, on the candidate piece, though? I would liken you to like a Santa Claus when you're calling. Like if you were ever calling me, I'd want to return that phone call as a candidate, and you would typically come bearing some sort of gift. Just the gift of your time would be very valuable. But I'm curious, how do candidates either get on your radar screen, stay on your radar screen? Because you've got an infinite number of people that you and your team, it's not just you personally, but your team too.
Yeah.
How do they get on your radar screen?
Good question. So, I get probably 10 LinkedIn messages a day from candidates looking for jobs. I have a team of 10 recruiters here. They each are talking to 5 to 10 candidates every single week. So if you just extrapolate that, call it at least 60 conversations a week in this company. We have 55 open jobs right now that we're working on across, let's call it 25 or 30 different B2B companies across the country. So we're busy. Most recruiters right now are really busy as well because, as you notice, when VC money starts flying back in, like it has been over the last 6 months, that means companies are hiring. There's a lot of activity. So my recommendations for candidates: be very specific. You want a demand gen role at Series A, salary of X to Y. You have these specific technology tools in your arsenal. Be very forthcoming and specific with those types of positions, and then just stay top of mind, right? Guys like me, or companies like us, we're always posting about roles that we're working on. So when you see those types of things, raise your hand. Hey, I got this. This is why I'd be a good fit. Let's have a conversation.
And just going one step further on the candidate side, are you seeing people getting either switching industries, or are they just sticking to their knitting? Like, hey, I'm really good at high-tech SaaS, Series A, versus, I really want to be promoted into a Series C director level role, or like, what are you seeing there?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one because regardless of what the candidate wants, it could not be in the best interest for the company to hire that thing, that whatever that piece that you're talking about. So keep in mind, companies are our clients. Companies pay us to find them great people. Companies have very specific skill sets that they're looking for. So if they're, we're doing a head of demand gen search right now for a Series A company out of San Francisco. They only want to talk to Series A, Series B. That's a lot of these companies have, if they're just raised Series A, they're sub 10 million, their goals, everyone's goal is to go from 10 to 100, right? So it's the easiest path to least resistance to hire somebody that had been in that journey before. They know what to expect. They can do more with less, right? It's a total mismatch if that Series A company hires a Series E marketing, leader, where it just would be a harder sell.
That's a really good point about momentum. And, because you've got that mindset of selling too, that you've got to build on that momentum as opposed to create a net new thought. Unless the company's thinking that way, it becomes really
Exactly.
challenging.
Exactly. So, and that's the biggest misconception that candidates come to folks like us, that they think we're one size fit all. Like, hey, I'm a demand gen person. I know you do demand gen. Can you help? Absolutely. But it's all about timing. So we just, in the last 30 days, we've hired 4 in demand gen. One was health tech, one was GRC tech, one is MarTech, the other one is MarTech. Each of those companies had very specific skill sets that they were looking for. They want the, 50 to 100, one's wants 10 to 20. So it's just, thinking through all that.
Yeah, and I may have a referral for you at the end of this after we get off live. You just spurred a
Love,
thought there
love referrals. Love
of somebody
referrals.
that could use some full-time help. But yeah, that's a really interesting way of thinking about it. By the way, I put your website on here. And this is where they find those jobs that you were talking about, like, hey,
Yeah.
raise your hand by looking at our website. So you keep that pretty up to date.
And connect with me on LinkedIn too. I'll pop in my LinkedIn profile and in the chat as well. That I'm on LinkedIn all day, every single day. My job is to be on LinkedIn to understand who's hiring, who's looking, what's happening in the market, who's raising funding, why are they raising funding, and then be able to be at that, kind of meet them where they're at, to provide some sort of value.
Yeah, I think you're hitting a lot of themes here. The one thing we haven't talked about that gets talked about in every conference. I just came back from B2BMX and moderated actually a CMO panel there. AI is like top of mind right now for CMOs, but has that filtered down to the user level or the IC level? And if so, like how is that manifesting right now, either on the candidate side or on the client request side? It's so fresh and so new.
Yeah.
Curious what are you seeing there?
I am, it's funny. The last 30 days, I've had more people come to me talking about AI in interview processes than ever. Because a lot of times in like in interview processes, there will be some sort of, assignment or, presentation that they have to put in place. So now I'm seeing this shift where CMOs are automatically thinking how much of this work was done with AI versus truly, their thought process, right? So regardless of who that person is, in the back of their head with all of this prevalence around AI in the space, it's just now becoming more forefront in interview processes, which has never been an issue before.
And are they ruling candidates out because they used AI, or are they trying to learn?
I think it's a second guess thing more than anything.
So it's introducing some uncertainty, maybe from the CMO perspective, doing the hiring is what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly.
Hey, is this person really authentic in their ideas?
Exactly.
And are you seeing? It's interesting you bring up, and we're getting closer to time here, but you mentioned kind of the assignments. And that's a hot topic, I know, even with CMOs. And I remember back in my operator days, I've been a CMO for 10 years in public and private companies, how reluctant even I was to wanting to do those. But at the same time, if you need a job, you gotta pay the man, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like, what are you seeing trend wise with those assignments? Are they pretty prevalent, like in almost every search? And you're a slightly different animal here too, because you probably have to prove out, hey, are these people really worth their salt in the systems that they say that they are good at?
Yeah. I think it's situation by situation. I think it depends on the maturity of the CMO that is hiring for that position, right? So if and how they're interviewing. A lot of times people don't have a process, they don't have questions. It's just a conversation.
Right.
The more sophisticated that person is and how they hire and how they interview will determine what steps they need. So, and I do see a lot of, regardless of that, just to counteract what I just said, I do see a lot of companies, regardless of how many people that CMOs hired in their career, they still do some sort of assessment. It's not meant to be an 8-hour thing, a 10-hour thing, but it shows how much you want the job, right? To invest that time into that project and really give it your all.
True.
They want to see that people want to be wanted. Candidates want to be wanted. Companies that are hiring want them, you to work there. So it's really just another kind of like gut check step in an interview process to make sure that you're bought into, potentially working there.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, I could kind of pull some sales lessons learned here as you're talking and I'm listening to it. I think you're really right about the wanting sensation of everybody does want to feel wanted and heard.
Yes.
So that's a terrific point.
And such a sensitive thing as changing a job. I mean, what a whirlwind, right? Like you're getting out of you're comfortable in your current job. You know what you're expecting. You know everybody at that business versus one day you're leaving and you got to do that all over again.
Right.
You don't even know where the bathroom is for the first 3 weeks that you start in this new position. You don't know. So it's like going from the known to the unknown, and it's scary, right? And it's a scary scenario, and just trying to manage that whole process.
Last question on my side, because we're brushing up against time here. Actually, second to last question. What kind of trends are you seeing hiring right now, 23, 24, going into 25? Like, is it hotter than it was last year? Is it about the same? Is it down?
Hotter, right. Our business is hotter right now. The only, in 2020, so give you kind of a, level set. So the last 2 years, we've averaged about 110 placements a year, over 12 months, right? So, give or take about 10 placements a month.
Yep.
Through February of this year, we've already made 35 placements for our customers in the first 2 months of the year.
Okay, so about 50% higher then.
50% higher than what we've seen in the last 2 years.
Interesting.
Again, it's very tight. Like, I'm sure everybody here, if there are a lot of marketers on this conversation, I'm sure everybody is, tied to LinkedIn every single day. You see all these announcements of
True.
this
Yes.
company getting funding and this
Yeah.
company getting funding, and this person in my network is hiring. When you see that, companies like us are really busy. Candidates are flowing. They're on the market, and it's just a good thing across the industry.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great to hear, Max. And you're right. There have been a lot more postings, and I couldn't tell, was that because people have fresh budgets or it's a fresh year, but it seems like there's a lot more enthusiasm for hiring than perhaps 2023, the tail end of 2023, and even parts of 2024 hopefully can continue.
Yeah.
Just wrapping up here, any closing thoughts from your side of things?
I would say the last thing I want to say is just, I think I touched on this earlier. Can you see me?
Yeah, it just did a temporary reset there. I'm not sure what happened there. We had a little hiccup.
The last thing I'll say is, like, marketers on this conversation, whether you have 6 Sense, you have Demand Base, you're evaluating ABM, you have all of these tools. It's great that you've invested in this technology, but really dig in and think, what does my team look like that has the chops to run these specific programs? So if you're looking at 6 Sense and you don't have anybody internally that's ever done it, find resources like John, find resources like me to help bridge that gap and create that knowledge transfer, because it's a big lift, right? ABM's not a plug-in, a technology, send a bunch of emails like HubSpot, you're going to see ROI immediately. It's a big lift, and you need the right expertise internally to get you from 0 to 1, and then from 1 to 10.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with what you said there. The ABM's definitely not a light switch where you flip it on, but you're clearly in the right spaces here between Sixth Sense, Demand Base, Clay, Marketo. You're playing in the right universe. Not that you need me to tell you that,
Yeah.
but really exciting to hear kind of how you're thinking of things. And just want to acknowledge and thank you for joining us this week
Thanks,
on our
John. Yeah,
conversation.
thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in a couple weeks in Phoenix.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're skipping next week. Meg and I are both on travels next week, but in 2 weeks we'll be back in action, and grateful for everyone participating today.
See everybody. Thanks so much for having me.